Paper was like gold in medieval times.
Oh, not tobacco, sugar.
That everything we thought we knew about the world might turn out to be completely wrong.
I mean, if you're going to build a house, it's got to look like something. Why not a castle?
This is the story of an idea, one that begins as a simple doodle on a napkin, but grows over time into this wondrous structure.
Is truly magical.
In a small town setting.
It's just one of these unbelievably unique structures built by a single man.
He's crazy or brilliant.
I don't care what anybody thinks of me.
It is the story of how one man's patience, perseverance, and sheer stubbornness transformed an entire community.
Welcome to our community. Welcome to Millbrook. It's a great destination. Parks, architecture, a downtown that hasn't changed in 100 years, a small village, but with big ideas.
Millbrook, New York. This charming little village, nestled in the Hudson Valley, is only a 90-minute drive from Manhattan. Yet in some ways, Millbrook is a world apart. Here, visitors can find peace and tranquility and an ideal spot to unwind. It's one reason why many New York celebrities have chosen this quaint village as their second home. Tourists passing through this rustic setting will also discover a number of antique shops, a sure sign the region is steeped in history. But there's one startling bit of local history that never fails to amaze visitors. A few miles from town, there's a structure right out of the Middle Ages, Wings Castle.
Wings Castle represents 100 years of building tradition. It's a fantasy, it's a castle, it's in our own backyard. It's a great place to visit.
85% of this grand castle is built from recycled materials. Its four-story structure covers 3,400 square feet and overlooks a magnificent vineyard.
And what better location than to create a castle overlooking and dominating the Hudson Valley? It's truly magical.
The man who spent 44 years designing and building this medieval marvel and who now maintains it is self-taught artist Peter Wing.
When Peter and I were dating, and he proposed to me, he brought me up here and on this beautiful site.
Look at these views around here. Big ideas. You get big ideas. It's expansive. You get these big ideas.
And he said, I'm going to build a castle here, and I'd like to put you in it. Will you marry me? Well, who wouldn't? You know, a castle? Yeah, that sounds cool.
You'll feed any line to a girl to get her attention. I said, I'll build you a castle. I really, at the time, probably didn't think it would be anything like this or it would come true. All's fair in love and war, and I suppose, you know, making up wild stories like that counts, you know?
But Peter Wing's wild story becomes reality, and with his new bride by his side, Peter takes the first steps to realizing his dream home on a piece of land he inherited.
I mean, if you're going to build a house, it's got to look like something. Why not a castle?
Peter and Tony Wing want to build their own home, except they lack two important things: money.
If we had $300 between the two of us, it's probably saying a lot.
And an architectural plan.
We knew we had to go to the town board and get a permit.
The permit says, supply a picture of a house. It didn't say supply a picture of the house you were going to build. Nothing of the sort. It just was quite simple. Supply a picture of a house.
and we go down there, and we wait our turn, and we go into this room, and there's this big table and these people sitting there. And they said, "What are you here for?" And we said, "Well, we want to get a permit to build a house in the back acreage of the old farm." And they said, "Well, all right, what are you going to build?" I guess people go there with more preparation than we did. But Peter had a sketch pad with him and a flare pen. He's always got a sketch pad and a flare pen. This is his trademark. And he flipped it open and he went.
So I drew a house with a door, 2 windows, a chimney, and smoke curling out of it, and here's a house.
Turned it around and he went, "This." I still have that picture in my cellarway, hanging right there. The picture he showed the town board. And they went, "Okay, fine." That was it.
Today, by and large, he would have to provide the blueprints and all of the details before he could even begin construction. That's a difference of a generation.
It was every square inch by design. Peter, I have sketchbooks that are stacks and stacks, which I cherish because every section, every little part of this house, he'd sketch out. He would sketch it out, sit there at night and sketch it out.
He would, I'd say, "Pete, what's going on over here?" And then he would just take a blank piece of paper and draw a diagram and show it to me. He said, "This is what I want it to look like." And the line would go here, there, and all of a sudden it would develop into what you see here.
Mostly it was getting the shapes, the rough framing done, and the plumbing laid out, and the electrics run, and all of this.
Not that he knew anything about building, but it just seemed to come natural. Where the pipes go, where the electrical go. When you look at the mechanics that have to go into it, the structure itself, if he wasn't too sure, he overbuilt it, just to make sure that it was in safe territory.
We thought, truthfully, it would take us 2 or 3 years to fulfill the dream of building a castle. That's how young and naive we were about what we were starting here.
We started with this first section. Tony and I took down a barn in 1969, and we got it erected here, the frame, in 1970, and there we went. From there, 1971, this taller tower was framed. Looked like a barn still, so that 3/4 sort of tower was added. And this is just the rough shapes. The stonework came much later. And, it's just been a progression of what's called organic architecture.
Peter would work from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. on this house 7 days a week. I would work my job, come home, and work alongside of him after work and weekends.
But she would mix cement by hand. She did all the stupid stuff, kept stuff picked up, clean parts, dipped the shingles, cut the shapes out.
If it was insulating, we'd do it together, or I'd insulate and he'd be putting up the studs right ahead of me. Whatever it took, we just did it.
Just name it, she did it. Her help with anything, really. So she worked as hard as anyone else would on the building.
It was just persevere, persevere, persevere.
They were like one. Every one of those shingles you see, all those cedar shakes, she hand-dipped them in a barrel of that red paint by herself, and then hung them out to dry, and then handed them up to him, and then so he could tack them onto the roof. Everything, she is this building. Building wouldn't exist without her. This is Pete's tribute to her, as far as I'm concerned. And it's a great love affair on top of that.
We had no money to do this. We just had lots of ideas and energy and really the thought that we could do it. We lived in the basement. I don't think you could do that today. But we actually, put up the blockwork, capped it off, and lived downstairs. We had a furnace, we had running water, and we kind of camped for 3 years.
It had the well pump in. It was just one I think my father-in-law found on the dump.
We didn't have a stove for about 2 years, but we had a hot plate on and off.
It was a tin box, and it had a drawer on it. You pulled it out and pushed it in, it would bake. If you flipped it over, pulled the drawer out, put the drawer back in right side up, it would broil. It was a bigger broiler, and that was our stove. And we had a little refrigerator and just, you know, we didn't realize it wasn't convenient, you know what I'm saying? 6 dogs kept us warm.
You know, we didn't need extra comforts beyond that because, truthfully, if we were awake, we were up here working. We were doing something that was one step closer to finishing this. We just decided we'd have to find affordable things that we could build with, which turned us toward recyclable things that people were discarding we could afford, basically. People would look at us like, why do you want to buy that old barn? We took down 11 old barns together, dismantling them just for the beams and the floorboards and anything we could salvage and use. We went to the wreckers in Poughkeepsie when they were tearing down the lower Main Street and said, we want to buy some of these old used brick. And they looked at us like we each had 2 heads, like, why do you want this disgusting old stuff? We just like it.
It just so happened that urban renewal was going on in the Hudson, so there was our endless supply of building materials. Take it, get it out of here. The price was right, it was free.
In the 1960s and 70s, the construction industry went through a period of major change. Innovative prefabricated materials started appearing, and that kick-started a renovation craze. Peter and Tony now have access to a wealth of discarded materials, ideal for building their castle.
My sense is that Peter was a product of time and place. It meant the opportunity to scavenge for all kinds of stonework, windows, trims, doorways, things that would have been tossed into a landfill.
It is built with 85% recycled material, and the price was right. At the time when we first got married, there was tons of stuff being yanked down all over, and people would say, just take it, get it out of here. You know, quite often we'd get a whole little building, you know, and the deal was just when you're done, make sure it's all seeded and grass grows, and like it was never there. And it was a good deal for us, you know, it was simple.
What is also unique at this time is they can get their hands on just about anything they needed, anywhere they find it.
Took dynamite and blasted a railroad bridge to loosen the huge stones so he could truck them here to put them around the house.
It's brilliant because here he is recycling things, and I'm not saying that in a, oh, he's such a green guy. That's not what I mean. He just would see something and know what to do with it.
No one saw them as treasures when he collected them. Bringing them back, putting them into his confection, did he know in advance how he used them? No. But that's the curiosity that represents Peter.
I admit it. We are both hoarders. Tony is a hoarder. I am a hoarder. There's no doubt. There's no question. I admit it.
Was this normal? Well, I mean, I don't want to say it wasn't normal, but it wasn't commonplace, you know. So it was kind of out of the ordinary what we were doing, for sure. It was definitely not seen as normal what we were doing in the 70s.
Peter just did things at the time that people thought maybe were a little bit too far out of the ordinary.
They'd look at you like you were totally crazy, and, you know.
He'll start out sometimes, and I'll think like, I don't know what he's doing now, and it's really weird, and I don't think this is going to work out.
They were kind of scratching their heads and saying, oh, these two.
Depending on the generation, depending on the age, he's crazy or brilliant. He's odd or imaginative.
I don't care what anybody thinks of me. I don't care. I don't care. You're on this planet one time. Don't you get it? You got 70, 75 years if you're lucky. I'm going to do what I want with my life. I'm going to do what I want.
3 years after the first shovel bites into the ground, the main structure is complete. It is made essentially of wood and brick. But for purists, a true castle is neither wood nor brick.
When castles are brick, they're called an armory. I don't care how you cut it. They call it, oh, look at the castle. It's not. It's an armory. It's made out of brick. It just, castle implies something, you know? And castles are stone. There's something about the solidity, you know, of a castle. They're in poems, they're in music, kids' fairy tales, movies, novels, and history. I mean, the Tower of London's got to be one of the most impressive castles in the world. William the Conqueror brought over some stone for the castle on boats all the way from France. He also used a type of stone, a limestone that's hardened. It was called ragstone. He first built the White Tower with rounded arches, you know, the buttress of the long ones to help keep support of the heavy stone walls.
Peter is fascinated with the history of the Tower of London. The White Tower was built in 1078 and served as both prison and palace for royal families throughout the ages. William the Conqueror ranged over hundreds of miles searching for just the right stones for his castle. Not surprisingly, that kind of commitment is a major inspiration for the builder of Wing's Castle.
The Tower of London has been there for almost 1,000 years now, but the history of the place just kind of slaps you in the face. It's really, you know, brings home the idea that a structure made of stone can withstand time elements.
Peter is determined that his own castle will get the same royal treatment. His will also be made of stone. But it means that building it will now take many more years than he planned.
For every large stone you see, that's roughly 1 day work. That would count as 1 day's work, because at the end of the day, when you got done, there's one big stone set and maybe 10 little ones, but behind some of these big stones, there's 30 stones, you know? It just was an endless sort of process.
When you're moving stone the size of a refrigerator, it's a whole different ballgame than when you're moving stone that you could manually lift.
Construction begins with the stonework for the garage and the patio. Then Peter sets the stones that become the outer facing of the tower.
So it's a durable product. It was laying around. I love it. Everyone's different, you know. Challenge. If things aren't challenging a bit to me, I don't like it. I'm not interested. I like challenge. I like challenges of things.
His next challenge is the tower that houses the kitchen. The stonework then continues at the rear of the castle on the north tower. Then his attention turns to the tower on the right wing, the tallest of the towers.
I rolled them up the hill, and then I let them roll down, and where they landed is where I set them.
I think there's a correlation with what Peter's doing and Sisyphus pushing the stone up, you know? And he's frozen in time, pushing the stone up.
A very slow process. Very slow, very tedious, very grueling.
Always working with stones, Peter finally gets around to erecting the site for some ruins and then building the moat.
Even our friends coming up here would go, "Look, Pete, why don't you just do it in brick? It'll be quicker, you know, get it over with." He just said, "No, I like these big stones, you know."
The challenges of working with stone is really very obvious. It's really heavy. And after a while, you start, it's fighting against your body, and your body is like getting older and older, and it's harder and harder to work with this heavy, heavy stuff.
It took the balance of 22 years to go outside and put the stone around the circumference of this castle.
Altogether, Peter lifts nearly 500,000 stones, most of them with his own bare hands.
I mean, he's my age, and he's still going. The stones are getting smaller, if you notice, from the start to the end. But that's just natural.
You can see, like, oh, God, he was 25. Oh, here he is 40. Now here he is over the hill.
About 7 years ago, Peter announced that he'd like to sell the castle.
And I said, enough. I'm working all the time, and besides, this is all basically meaningless. Whether it's my life or whether it's this or that, it's absolutely meaningless.
I think he just got to the point where he wanted to change. He just wanted off the farm. He wanted out of here.
I would have liked to go on to Europe, you know, see the world, Italy, India, I don't know, Japan.
So we put it on the market.
We got so upset and depressed as a family. We were just like, oh no, what would happen if they move?
Somebody could come in here and buy this and truthfully bulldoze it down for the property.
In a hot real estate market like Millbrook, Buyers are always on the lookout for properties that offer a panoramic view. Tony's concerns are justified. She has to convince her husband to reconsider selling something that means so much to so many.
36 years of your life, my life, our children's lives. We put everything we had into this, all our energy, all our money. You know, and this is art. This isn't just a house that you're selling. This is art. This is a live-in art project.
Tony said to me at one point, he thinks he's going to sell it, but I'm not leaving. And I thought, yay, you know? And I thought, like, yeah. And Tony, you know, Tony's the boss sometimes.
Tony Ann didn't want to sell, so she insisted on an extremely high price.
Tony comes up with a plan. She inflates the selling price of Wing's Castle with the expectation the cost will deter any potential buyers. She hopes that this will allow Peter enough time to reconsider selling.
While I'm wearing out, maybe she still had a little bit of zest. I don't know.
Tony's strategy works like a charm. Less than 4 months after putting their castle up for sale, Peter changes his mind.
He just looks at me and he said, you don't sell something you love.
You know, you always read someplace the grass is always greener, but you always come back to this, you know, and I think this is as much Tony and Pete as it is some stone and wood.
But what do you climb Mount Everest for? It takes you years to save the money, tons of money, go over months to get Sherpas or whatever those guys are, get up, and you're on top of that hill for about 2 minutes, or you're gonna die if you don't get off of it. So all that crap to be up there 2 seconds. All this crap to see that for 5 seconds. Worth it. Big time worth it.
Wing's Castle is considered one of New York State's great treasures. It sprang to life from the imagination and determination of a native son born in the Hudson River Valley. Settlement in this region dates back to the 18th century. Today, it features horse farms and vineyards amidst its rich heritage, making it an ideal setting for a castle.
Growing up in this area, Peter would have seen and experienced a number of extraordinary buildings. His day-to-day trip to school would have passed stone Bavarian chateaus, gatehouses with portcullis, the Bennett complex, which is an incredible facility in stone and turrets and towers.
German-styled castle, barns and gatehouses and bridges and all of this. And you would see all this stuff every day. And, you know, it just affected. I love those buildings. I really, and to this very day, I still like them. You know, they're great. They got stones that are preponderous.
His entire environment was one of fantasy. And that fantasy exists today. So many people who've never been here arrive and are in wonder that the building, that the community still maintains its presence. It's a step back in time.
In addition to its old historic roots, Millbrook has plenty to offer to the newcomer.
Yeah, Millbrook's a fantastic place to visit. We have countryside, beautiful countryside to look at. We've got estates in and around to look at. But we also have Franklin Avenue that's got beautiful antique shops. You can go over to the traditional diner and have yourself a burger. You can go up to Babette's and have a really nice scone. You can go over to Slam and Salmon and see what they have to offer. And also go up to our winery that's nearby, have a wine tasting. Beautiful spot up there.
It's a spot Peter Wing knows very well. After all, it's where he was born.
Well, this used to be the Wing Dairy Farm. Way back when we purchased this property in 1979, it was a bankrupt dairy that was owned by the Wing family. We are celebrating our 28th vintage in 2013. Our wines, since we're in a cool climate here in the Hudson Valley, our wines have a tendency to be more French-like, better with food. So our style of wine is very well balanced, a lot of fruit, meant to be drunk with food. And Peter was very, very helpful to us when we purchased it to get the winery up and running. Peter, over time, built his house on the hill above us, and to this day, it's part of, in many ways, part of Millbrook Winery because there's a castle on our hill.
Hello, I'm gonna tell you about the place now, Wing's Castle. Took 22 years to build what you're looking at. It has been primarily built by myself, my wife, you know, my children helping. Copper is just all invented. That's a doorknob there, and that's a water tank float, and you get on the top. Those are toilet bowl floats, so it gave us a flush roof line. The ironwork, the gate was $10. It was from a picker. This entranceway is loosely based on Asian, Tibetan, Chinese, Japanese designs. People say, is that the front entrance? I really, after all these years, I still don't know what we consider the front entrance, you know. The archway was added, and then the upper ruins, and it's based on an Irish ruin called Inchmahone Priory. It's on the west coast of Ireland, you know, monastic thing that decayed, and we copied that. You're better off copying a real ruin than you are trying to invent one. So that's what we did there.
Peter and Tony are generous neighbors. After the tourists leave, local residents are welcome to enjoy the site.
When Pete and Tony put in their swimming pool, that was their moat, and they had a moat warming party. So we went, when my children were very little, my daughters were little, and we went up and swam in the moat, and it was a nice evening. People don't very often get to swim in a moat, I guess.
Our son had the unique privilege of being invited to swim in the moat of the castle. For us, my wife and I, the thought of going to a house and swimming in a moat was unique. Peter and Tony both encouraged us and invited us to be involved as well.
The idea of the moat, like most ideas, it's a flash in the head. It's like a millisecond of an idea, but then it took 14 years to complete. It started before my children were born, probably, and they were like 14 or 15 before the moat was finished to jump in it. You know, I always wanted a pool. Why, I don't know. The time and the money and the maintenance that goes into this. I could swim in the south of France in the Mediterranean, you know, every summer, you know. A little unsightly this time of the year, but it's quite nice during the summer.
Let's make our way inside the castle walls to look at some of the more private places that are off limits to the general public. The bathroom was built in the shape of a four-leaf clover with unique fixtures in every corner. In this one, a metal cauldron serves as a bathtub, fit for a king.
Well, this is the kitchen, and it's where we spend most of our life, I think. Where else can you walk 2 feet and get ice cream? You know? Everything that's hanging in here, we have basically found at tag sales, garage sales, old farms, farmhouses as they've sold out in the last 30 years. And the floor itself is from a winnowing floor, a threshing floor in a barn. These boards are 2.5 inches thick, and they're probably the oldest boards we have in the house. They're so hard I couldn't saw them with a saw. They're just so petrified. Cupboards above, they're from a barn we took down, and Tony brought them here. She cleaned them, and then she repainted them. She copied an antique cupboard that she saw in a museum that she liked. This is a porcelain wood stove. It's 1900, 1905, someplace in there. Originally burnt coal, but I fixed it so it just burns wood. Tony's actually baked pizzas in there, and I don't know why, but for some reason, it actually tastes much better coming from a wood stove than the electric one. The window over here, that's from a church they took down in Hyde Park. It was called the Regina Caeli Church, and they built a modern church. It's ugly, but we got the windows 40 years ago. And this is Trudy. And Trudy is a blue and gold macaw. We've had her now 39 years, I think, and my kids hate her because the screaming she does. We know she's at least 101 or 2 years old. That's a minimum. She might be even a little older than that.
Stop it.
Well, that was the kitchen. This is like the living room or the grand hall, whatever people call it. Above you is a barn frame, 1820, 1840. It is the first building that Tony and I took down, 1969. We did it ourselves. It took about 6 days. The horse up there is 1905. We never touched it. If you look, it has its first original coat of paint. We kind of guarantee you will not see that again. This is our ship's balcony. but no part of it is a real ship. The ribs of the boat came from Emily Stout's Victorian porch. The rest is simply barn board, beam, and some old porch posts. A little further in here, we have a collection of helmets. There's about 75 on display. Right here is a suit of armor. It's Persian, except for the gas mask. It's Russian from the 60s, Cold War period. It's just for their entertainment. This is our fireplace here. And it's, you know, all used brick. In other words, it's entirely recycled except for the mortar, of course. Balcony behind it is a little walkway, and the whole family could hide up in there.
And to walk into Peter's environment, everything there has a story, and Peter is more than willing to share. To be able to see how he's used his imagination with those artifacts is truly exciting.
There's always some little thing that you can look at, you know? It's eye candy.
Millbrook is a tiny village of 1,500 residents nestled at the bottom of a rural valley. But to visit Peter Wing's castle is to travel back in time.
I saw Gaudi's work. I was a kid in a sailor's uniform. I'm in Barcelona. I had a few drinks, come down a sidewalk, and it was like, whammo. Who melted that building? How did that building melt? You know, we never saw anything like it. I never heard of the man before.
The work of Spanish architect Antonio Gaudi becomes an added source of inspiration for Peter.
He was influenced by shapes of nature. You can see that in the use of his stones, his sculpture, organic forms. I think his most famous quote was, "There are no straight lines in nature." There's definitely a playfulness to this style, and he was using recycled material way before it got trendy to do that. People have, you know, made some comparisons between some elements here at the castle, his work, and the use of broken tile.
After discovering Gaudi's work in Barcelona, Peter becomes obsessed with this master of the Art Nouveau movement.
He had all his books, photographs, and you can see, you know, in his tile work, and you can see his influence all through that. And he would get all kinds of ideas.
The builder of Wing's castle goes so far as to create a garden dedicated to his personal icon.
He did stuff like this. I mean, you know, he influenced me. He has lizards in Park Güell. These are American Art Deco tile from the 30s. And the dentist in town had 8 million of these things in his cellar because he was going to do mosaics around a swimming pool. He never did. So Tony and I made literally 3 trips with a station wagon, and we brought boxes of these tiles home. My wife had this orange vase that was given to her, and I knocked it over and broke it. And she said, "You better use this someplace." So there's the eye. That's the bottom. One of his better buildings, or bigger buildings, that just sort of hit you is the Sagrada Familia. It's a giant church, and it's one of his most famous works. Gaudi spent most of his career working on it. The style of it was just a mix of Gothic, Art Nouveau, but he had his own spin on everything and really elevated design to incredible levels. This is borrowed heavily from Antonio Gaudi. It's totally organic. If you look, that's a mouth open and eyes and hair standing up. My guess is he knew he'd never finish the church, so he needed to set an artistic and architectural example for others to follow. You know, he's passed away. It's somebody else's world. I'm sure it'll be fine. You know, they've only been working on the church for 150 years, something like that. So I'm sure it'll be another 150 before it's finished.
He's at a point now where, you know, he's proven himself. He won people over with his results. He wasn't just talking about something, he was doing it. Now he's an icon. He might have been crazy 20 years ago, but now he's an icon of this area.
Any small community today needs to think about what the personality of the community is. What is it that you have that may be unique? And for us, Peter's complex complements that beautifully.
Everybody kind of has a smile on their face when I talk about Wings Castle. It's one of our very nice local features.
Saw the sign for Wings Castle and drove in the driveway not thinking that there was going to be a castle, and it was really shocking in a wonderful way that there was a literal castle here.
It's become such a symbol of our community that it's been used in a variety of ways.
This is our Castle Hill Chardonnay, and it makes a really wonderful, chalky, flinty, lighter style, maybe Chablis-like Chardonnay. It's really a wine that's very, very well known, and it's because of the soils right below Wings Castle. They're very rocky and shaly, and that makes a difference in the way the grapes taste.
It's been incorporated into a lot of the publicity of the community. Phone directories, magazines, brochures at the county history department, and tourism. Part of our yellow pages as a destination. That's Peter's drawing of the castle.
Everybody respects him, and he's done a lot for Millbrook.
Peter has been very active with children's projects. He does a haunted house, he does a Shakespearean performance, a summer camp.
Peter has been involved with the Children's Shakespearean Theater for over 35 years. Wings Castle is the perfect backdrop for a performance.
The stages, the lights, the kids, the costumes. To hear them enunciate Shakespeare correctly, even though they're 5 years old.
We shall ne'er be younger. Spitfire, spout rain, a false conclusion.
It's well worth it. Believe me, it's well worth it.
To be in this amazing environment, which just screams creativity. And the whole town comes to watch these productions. That's what's so amazing. And it's just such a magical setting, so.
Although Wings Castle is a private property, it's far from being off limits. Peter has been extremely generous in opening up his home to the people of Millbrook so they too can share in its unique features.
It was almost as if you built it for this purpose.
Well, what other good would it be if you didn't use it for something like this,
right.
You know?
I'm glad he didn't sell it. I'm glad he's continued his project at the castle.
Just, the thing just grew.
And it's just an incredible piece of work, what he's done, all with his own hands, in his own mind, just remarkable.
My wife still shakes her head. She says, I don't believe who the hell comes here, who you've attracted. I said, well, I don't believe it either, but, they're here.
Using the castle as a tourist attraction evolved on its own.
People started coming here in buses and motorcycle gangs and car clubs. And a couple of years ago, I had the Russian embassy, the Russian consulate, and all of their relatives from Moscow.
They see the Wings Castle as a destination. People really understand that it's really something to be seen.
Wings Castle isn't just a tourist stopover. Sleepovers can be booked in one of 2 bedrooms, down in the dungeon, where Peter's dream castle first took shape.
Come on in. This is the dungeon room. It's the first room that we got done. A lot of people like it. Private bath. Everything's fresh, new. Telephone's $18.95. That's not fresh and new. Anyway, the hardware's all contrived from junk. Some of the guests complain about, there's junk around. No, we built the place from junk. We're trying to create an atmosphere where you come here, you're in a castle, really a place to get away from it all.
We discovered this beautiful medieval bedroom. And when we saw that, we were like, okay, we're staying. We're staying for a couple of nights. So we got up in the morning, we had breakfast, really nice breakfast. Then in the back, we saw the actual B&B that Peter is finishing up right now. And it looks really nice, and we had so much fun that we definitely want to go back.
This is for bed and breakfast guests only. That's a common area down there. It's going to be like an old English pub or clam house. Above is a large room larger than the others if somebody wants to stay a week or 10 days or 2 weeks, you know.
To meet the growing demand for overnight accommodations, Peter has converted his latest addition into a bed and breakfast. The new building is just about ready to welcome its first guests.
Some people call it the Lemony Snicket House because that's what it looks like.
It's designed to look very old, but it's in fact not, you know. There's upside-down tree crotches. The faces are made from dead tree parts. The tin up there is from old goat barns. The door's from Craigslist. I got it about 2 years ago. You know, it didn't look like that. I had the hinges. I put those on, and the little circular stained glass pieces I had from broken stained glass windows. And you feel like you could be in Europe. That's the whole idea here.
He's still creating and he's still working on it. And as long as he feels he wants to, I think, you know, I'm all for that. And I'm willing to support it and help it in any way I can.
44 years after he began, Peter's work remains unfinished. Nevertheless, Wings Castle is an achievement that will continue to benefit the whole community for as long as it stands. And that could be forever.
I think that Wings Castle will continue to be a work in progress until the end of Pete and Tony's life. I think it'll continue to grow and expand and have new features and new attractions.
It's just one of these unbelievably unique structures built by a single person, a single man. And this absolutely should be on the National Register of Historic Places.
We got something here. We really have something unique.
This is art. This is something that you cannot take to a gallery. It's Peter's lifetime artwork. And the only way it can be seen is if people do come here.
This is America. It's the land of dreams. You have to figure out a way to do it, and you will do it. You're only on this planet once. You do whatever you want with your life.
I can remember this room when you could see the sky through it. And now, look at it. This for you, Pete. Tony.
We're called skylights.
I thought it was just lack of a roof.
Here's the castle.